Picture this, you're on the ice, it's quiet, you're staring at your flasher, watching that little green line that is your jig. Suddenly, a thick red line appears from the bottom. It rises slowly, cautiously. It gets closer to your jig, and then it just turns and fades away. What went wrong? You did everything right. Or did you? What if I told you that the very technique you've been taught, the one you've been perfecting for years, is the exact thing scaring that fish away? Today, we're exposing the huge, invisible mistake that makes your jig look like a threat, not a meal. And I promise, what you're about to hear will change the way you move your rod forever. So let me ask you, do you think more action equals more bites? You might want to rethink that. For generations, we've been told the same things about jigging. Keep that lure moving. Give it some aggressive snaps to call them in. Develop a steady, rhythmic cadence. We see the pros on TV doing it, with sharp rod twitches and constant motion. It's become muscle memory. We drop the jig and our hand just starts doing that up and down dance without a second thought. It's a habit, a belief system passed down from angler to angler. The idea is simple. A moving lure gets noticed, and it's not entirely wrong, but it's dangerously incomplete. We've become so focused on getting the fish's attention, we've forgotten to ask the most important question. After we get their attention, what are we actually telling them with our lure's movement? Let's start with the fundamental flaw in our thinking. We, as humans, live in a world of constant noise and action. We think that to be noticed, we must be loud and active. So we translate that to our jigging. We make it dance, we make it jump, we make it shake. We are trying to make our lure shout, "Hey, I'm over here, eat me!" But the underwater world, especially under the ice, is a world of subtlety and energy conservation. Fish don't respond to shouting. They respond to whispers. Now think about what your Mormyshka is supposed to imitate. It's a tiny aquatic insect, a freshwater shrimp, a larva. Have you ever seen a water bug have a seizure for 2 minutes straight? No, they make small, subtle movements. They pause, they drift, they might give a tiny kick. The frantic, rhythmic bouncing we do with our rod tip looks nothing like this. To a fish, it's not a meal. It's a bizarre, unnatural thing. And in the wild, anything that's unnatural is potentially dangerous. This brings us to the rhythm trap. Many anglers pride themselves on their perfect, steady jigging cadence. A tap, 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 pause, lift, tap, 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 pause. It feels right. It feels professional. But nature has no perfect rhythm. A real creature's movements are random. An insect might twitch once, then stay still for 10 seconds, then it might drift down slowly. Your perfect man-made rhythm is a dead giveaway that something is fake. It's the underwater equivalent of a robot doing the moonwalk. Fish see it and know something is off. Let's talk about the speed of your jig. We often work the lure way too fast. We're impatient. We want to cover water and trigger a reaction bite. But in cold water, a fish's metabolism slows down. They are not looking to chase down a hyperactive meal. They are looking for an easy opportunity, an insect that is struggling, dying, or unaware. A lure that is zipping up and down at high speed is not an easy meal. It's a healthy, energetic creature that would require a lot of effort to catch. It's simply not worth the energy. Here's a huge one. We ignore the importance of the fall. Most anglers focus on the up part of the jig, the lift, the snap, the twitch. We put all our effort into making the lure jump, but for many fish, the bite comes when the lure is falling. A natural-looking, slow, fluttering fall mimics a dying or wounded creature perfectly. But if you're keeping a tight line on the way down or just letting it plummet, you're killing that natural presentation. The fall should be the main event, not just the reset for your next jig. Think about the physics of it for a second. You move your rod tip up 6 inches, that's a massive movement. Down in the water, that tiny 1-gram Mormyshka just shot towards the surface like a rocket. Then it plummets back down. Imagine a real bug doing that. It's just not realistic. The fish sees this frantic yo-yo and its brain, hardwired for survival over millions of years, screams danger, not dinner. It looks like something panicked and trying to escape. And fish know that things only panic when a bigger predator is around. Let's discuss what I call rod tip translation. Anglers often watch their rod tip, not their line or their flasher. They make the rod tip dance, but they forget how that movement translates down 30 feet of line. A tiny twitch of your wrist can become a violent jerk of the lure. We over-exaggerate everything. The key is to make incredibly small, subtle movements with your rod. Think of it less as jigging and more as quivering or vibrating the lure in place. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine a big, wary perch sitting a foot away from your jig. You start your classic jigging cadence. To that fish, it's like someone turned on a strobe light and started blasting techno music in a quiet library. It's jarring, it's alarming, it's everything that a calm, confident food source is not. Now imagine you just let the jig sit there, and every 10 seconds you give it one single, tiny shake. That's curious, that's intriguing, that's a potential meal. Another common mistake is jigging the same way in every situation. Early in the morning, fish might be aggressive, and a little more action is fine. But after a few hours of pressure with other anglers stomping around, those same fish become incredibly spooky. They are on high alert. Your aggressive jigging that worked at sunrise is now the very thing sending them running. You have to adapt your presentation to the mood of the fish, and 90% of the time that means toning it way, way down. Let's bust the myth of the reaction strike. We're often told to use sharp, erratic movements to force a fish to bite out of instinct. And yes, sometimes this works, especially for very aggressive species. But for most finicky panfish or wary walleye under the ice, you are far more likely to get a reaction flea than a reaction strike. You're not triggering their feeding instinct, you're triggering their flight instinct. The real trigger is subtlety, not shock. Now let's get practical. How do we fix this? First, focus on the pause. The pause, the dead stick, is the most powerful tool in your arsenal. After you move the jig, let it sit perfectly still for 5 seconds, for 10 seconds, even for 30 seconds. It feels unnatural to us as impatient anglers, but it's completely natural for the fish. This is when most bites happen. The fish approaches the moving lure, inspects it during the pause, and then decides to eat. Next, learn to jig with controlled slack. Instead of a tight line on the fall, drop your rod tip slightly to introduce a small amount of slack. This allows the Mormyshka to fall on its own, fluttering and spiraling like a real insect. It looks 1,000 times more natural than a lure being pulled down on a tight line. You have to watch your line like a hawk for the slightest tick or jump, because that's your bite. The next step is to reduce your movement. I mean drastically. Try this. Hold your rod and try to make the tip move as little as possible, just a tiny, barely perceptible quiver. This is often all you need. This minimal vibration is enough to make the feelers or materials on your jig come alive without making the whole lure look like it's having a panic attack. Think of it as breathing life into the lure, not making it do gymnastics. Here's a great visual. Go to a pet store and just watch the tiny shrimp or snails in an aquarium. Watch how they move. They crawl slowly, they stop for long periods, they might make a quick flick to reposition. That is your textbook. That is the movement you need to copy. Take a mental picture of that and replicate it with your rod tip the next time you're on the ice. Your results will surprise you. Let's also consider the sound and vibration. Every time your lure jerks and jumps, it sends out pressure waves in the water. An aggressive, rhythmic jigging pattern sends out a constant, unnatural thump, thump, thump. It's a signal that something artificial is down there. A subtle quiver or a slow drift is silent. It's stealthy. It allows the fish to discover the lure on its own terms without being alarmed by a strange underwater drumbeat. Think about the mindset of a predator. A predator is looking for signs of weakness. A healthy, strong creature zipping around is not weak. A creature that slowly flutters down and then sits still with an occasional twitch. That is a sign of weakness. That is an easy meal. Your presentation should scream, "I am weak and vulnerable," not "I am a healthy, strong, and possibly dangerous weirdo." So, how do you know if you're doing it right? Watch your electronics. When a fish comes in to investigate, stop all aggressive movement. Let the jig sit still, or give it the tiniest shakes you can manage. If the fish stays and seems interested, you're doing it right. If the fish approaches and then immediately bolts, your movement was too aggressive. The fish itself is your best teacher. You just have to learn to read its body language on the flasher. Another key is to let the lure do the work. Modern Mormyshkas and ice jigs are designed with specific actions. They are weighted to flutter, spiral, or glide on the fall. If you are constantly jerking the lure around on a tight line, you are overriding that built-in natural action. Trust the design of your lure. Give it the slack and the time it needs to perform the way it was intended to. Consider this real-life scenario. Two anglers are fishing side by side over the same school of crappies. One is aggressively jigging, his rod tip bouncing a mile a minute. He's marking fish all day, but getting very few bites. The other angler is barely moving his rod. It looks like he's not even fishing, but he's the one pulling fish out of the hole. The difference is not the spot or the lure, it's the understanding that less is almost always more. So the ultimate takeaway is this: your goal is to be forgotten. You want your jig to look so natural, so much a part of the underwater environment, that the fish's brain doesn't flag it as something foreign or dangerous. The moment your presentation becomes predictable, rhythmic, or overly aggressive, you have failed. The true art of jigging is the art of doing almost nothing and doing it with extreme patience and purpose. So there it is. The big secret isn't some complex new technique. It's a complete shift in philosophy. The reason your jigging might be scaring fish is because it's too perfect, too rhythmic, and too aggressive. It's a human movement, not a natural one. The real turning point, the aha moment, is realizing that the most powerful thing you can do with your jig is to let it be still, to have the confidence to stop doing and just let the lure be. This changes everything because it forces you to slow down, to be more observant, and to fish with intention rather than just habit. Thank you so much for watching. If this video made you rethink your jigging style, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our next video where we bust another common fishing myth. Now I want to hear from you. What is the single longest amount of time you've ever held your jig perfectly still before a fish finally hit it? Let me know in the comments below.